She vanished without warning, not with dramatic flair or tearful goodbyes, but with a quiet detachment that cut deeper than any screaming match ever could. Her silence became his obsession, her absence his addiction, and her emotional void the very thing that made him chase harder than he'd ever chased before. It's a peculiar truth about human nature. We desperately pursue those who master the art of emotional withdrawal while taking for granted those who shower us with genuine affection, like moths to a flame. We're drawn to the very people who have perfected the art of keeping us at arm's length, perpetually dancing on the edge of connection without ever fully committing. This magnetic pull toward emotional unavailability isn't just a romantic quirk. It's a psychological trap that's destroying relationships worldwide, creating generations of emotional addicts who mistake the thrill of the chase for genuine love. She walked away, just like that. No dramatic goodbye, no tearful explanation. She simply detached. And in that moment, something inside him shattered. Yet paradoxically, he felt more drawn to her than ever before. Her emotional withdrawal became the very thing that made him chase harder, want more, need deeper. This pattern repeats itself countless times across relationships worldwide. The more a woman emotionally detaches, the more intensely many men find themselves attracted and pursuing. It's a dance as old as time, yet few understand its deeper psychological workings or recognize how it shapes their own behavioral patterns. You're probably thinking of someone right now, perhaps yourself or someone close to you caught in this spiral. That gut-wrenching feeling when someone who once showed warmth and affection suddenly becomes distant and cold. The overwhelming urge to bridge that growing emotional chasm, even as your efforts seem to push them further away. But why? Why do we find ourselves magnetically pulled toward those who step back? What makes emotional unavailability such a powerful attractant? The answer lies deeper than you might think, touching the very core of human psychology and our fundamental needs for connection and validation. When someone is fully available, consistently showing love and affection, we often take it for granted. It becomes our normal, our expected baseline. But when that same person begins to withdraw, something primal awakens within us. It's like oxygen. We never think about breathing until someone starts choking us. Suddenly, that basic need becomes our sole focus. The same principle applies to emotional connection. When it's abundant, we barely notice it. When it starts slipping away, it consumes our thoughts, driving us to desperate measures to reclaim what we're losing. This is where the addiction begins. Yes, addiction, because that's exactly what this pattern becomes, a psychological and emotional dependency that mirrors the same brain chemistry as substance addiction. The intermittent reinforcement of occasional emotional availability creates a reward pattern more potent than consistent affection ever could. Think about your own experiences. Remember those moments when someone's withdrawal made them appear more desirable, when their distance made you question your worth, your attractiveness, your very being? That's not coincidence. It's a deeper psychological mechanism at work. But here's where it gets interesting. This pattern often says more about us than it does about the person withdrawing. Our intense reaction to emotional detachment frequently stems from unresolved wounds, childhood experiences, and deep-seated. When someone withdraws emotionally, it triggers our deepest fears of abandonment. The mind starts racing. What did I do wrong? Am I not good enough? How can I make them stay? These questions reveal our underlying insecurities and beliefs about love being conditional, something we must earn rather than freely receive. The intensity of our reaction often correlates directly with the depth of our unhealed wounds. The stronger our abandonment fears, the more compelling the chase becomes. We're not just pursuing the person who's withdrawing. We're desperately trying to prove our worth, to heal our past hurts through present validation. This creates a dangerous cycle. The more we chase, the more they withdraw. The more they withdraw, the more intensely we chase. Each iteration deepens the pattern, strengthening the addiction while further eroding our self-worth. But there's something even more profound at play here. Our attraction to emotional unavailability often reflects our own relationship with ourselves. If we're uncomfortable with our own emotions, we'll naturally gravitate toward others who mirror that distance. It's familiar territory, even if it's painful. Think about your closest relationships. How comfortable are you with emotional intimacy? And do you find yourself pulling away when others get too close? Or perhaps you're the one always pushing for more connection, feeling constantly starved for emotional closeness? Understanding these patterns requires brutal honesty with ourselves. It means looking beyond the surface attraction to emotional unavailability and examining what it triggers within us. What old stories are we trying to rewrite? What wounds are we attempting to heal through these relationships? This isn't just about romantic relationships. This pattern can manifest in friendships, family relationships, even professional connections. The core dynamic remains the same. Emotional withdrawal creates an intensified desire for... The real question isn't why others detach. It's why we become so consumed by their detachment. What void are we trying to fill? What validation are we desperately seeking? The answers often lead us back to our earliest experiences of love and connection. Consider the child who learned that love was conditional, that affection had to be earned through performance or perfect behavior. That child grows into an adult who unconsciously seeks situations where they must prove their worth, where love feels just out of reach. The emotionally unavailable partner becomes the perfect canvas for projecting these old patterns. You see, when someone detaches emotionally, they create a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human heart. We rush to fill that space with our efforts, our attention, our desperate attempts to reconnect. But in doing so, we often lose ourselves entirely. The cruelest irony. The more we chase someone who's emotionally withdrawn, the less attractive we become to them. Our desperation signals a lack of self-worth, which paradoxically makes us less appealing to the very person we're trying to attract. It's a self-defeating cycle that leaves us exhausted, diminished, and further from genuine connection than ever. But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if the person who detaches isn't the source of our addiction, but rather a mirror reflecting our own emotional unavailability back to us? This is where the real transformation begins. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Think about your most intense emotional attachment to someone who was unavailable. Now ask yourself, in what ways were you unavailable to yourself during that time? Now, how did you abandon your own needs, values, and boundaries in pursuit of their attention? The truth is, our addiction to emotionally unavailable people often masks a deeper addiction, the addiction to external validation. We become so focused on earning love from others that we forget how to love ourselves. We chase the high of their occasional attention while neglecting our own emotional well-being. This pattern becomes particularly intense in men because many of us were conditioned to view emotional vulnerability as weakness. When a woman detaches, it creates a double bind. We feel the pain of disconnection but struggle to acknowledge or express that pain authentically. Instead, we channel into pursuit, into trying to fix the situation, into anything but sitting with our own uncomfortable emotions. But here's what nobody tells you about emotional unavailability. It's contagious. When we repeatedly engage with people who can't or won't connect deeply, we start building our own walls. We develop protective mechanisms that make us less available for genuine connection, even as we desperately seek it. The cycle becomes self-perpetuating. We're drawn to those who can't fully connect because deep down we're afraid of full connection ourselves. Their unavailability feels safer than the vulnerability required for genuine intimacy. It's a dance of shadows, each partner reflecting the other's fears of true closeness. Think about the last time you felt someone pulling away emotionally. Notice how your body responds even to the memory. That tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the subtle panic rising in your throat, these physical sensations reveal how deeply this pattern is wired into our system. The very thing that drives our addiction can become the key to our liberation. When we start paying attention to these reactions, when we get curious about our triggers instead of just acting on them, we begin the process of breaking free. The first step is recognizing that our intense attraction to emotional unavailability is actually a call to deepen our relationship with ourselves. Every time we feel that pull towards someone who's detaching, it's an invitation to ask, what emotional needs am I expecting others to fulfill that I should be meeting on my own? This isn't about blaming ourselves or the other person. It's about understanding that our patterns of attraction and attachment are giving us valuable information about our own emotional landscape. They're showing us where we need to heal, where we need to grow, where we need to develop greater self-awareness and self-compassion. The path forward isn't about learning to avoid emotionally unavailable people. It's about becoming so emotionally available to ourselves that we naturally lose interest in those who can't meet us at that level. It's about filling our own emotional cup so fully that we don't need to chase others for drops of validation. Let's talk about something that might feel uncomfortable but needs to be addressed: the addiction to the chase itself. Many of us have become so accustomed to pursuing emotional connection that we don't know who we are without that pursuit. The chase has become our identity, our purpose, our way of avoiding our own emotional depths. When someone detaches emotionally, they create a puzzle we feel compelled to solve. Each small gesture becomes loaded with meaning. Every text message turns into a cryptic code we must decipher. We convince ourselves that if we just try hard enough, love deeply enough, or prove our worth convincingly enough, they'll finally open up and stay connected. But this pursuit isn't really about them. It's about the story we're telling ourselves. A story that says we're not complete without their validation. A story that suggests their emotional withdrawal is a reflection of our worth rather than their own. The most painful part, this addiction to emotionally unavailable people often stems from a deep-seated belief that we don't deserve consistent, reliable love. We become so comfortable with the familiar pain of pursuing connection that steady, available love feels foreign, even uncomfortable. Think about times you've encountered someone emotionally available, someone ready and willing to connect deeply. Did you find yourself feeling strangely uncomfortable? Did you perhaps find reasons why they weren't right for you? Did their availability make them seem somehow less desirable? Your actions reveal a profound truth. We're not just addicted to people who detach emotionally, we're addicted to the familiar pattern of seeking what we can't fully have. The struggle gives us identity. The periodic wins give us just enough hope to keep playing this exhausting game. But what if the game itself is the problem? What if our attraction to emotional unavailability is actually keeping us from experiencing the depth of connection we truly desire? What if we're so busy chasing what we can't have that we're missing the authentic connections available to us right now? The turning point comes when we realize that emotional unavailability isn't just about the other person's behavior. It's about our response to it. It's about our willingness to participate in relationships that offer us crumbs instead of the full feast of genuine connection. Every time we chase someone who's emotionally withdrawn, we're sending ourselves a message. We're saying that their occasional attention is worth more than our consistent self-respect. We're telling ourselves that their emotional distance is more valuable than our emotional well-being. This pattern becomes particularly destructive because it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we chase emotional unavailability, the more we attract people who can only offer us that same pattern. We become experts at dancing this dance of disconnect, even as it leaves us feeling increasingly empty and alone. When we start, real transformation becomes possible. When we start recognizing these patterns, we can begin to make different choices. Not from a place of judgment or self-criticism, but from a deep understanding of our own worth and capacity for genuine connection. The first step is often the most challenging. We must become willing to feel the discomfort of not chasing, to sit with the anxiety that arises when we don't try to fill the emotional void someone else has created, to face our own feelings of unworthiness without trying to prove them wrong through pursuit. This requires a fundamental shift in perspective. Instead of asking, why don't they want to connect with me? We must start asking, why am I willing to accept less than the full, authentic connection I deserve? Instead of trying to decode their withdrawal, we need to decode our own willingness to participate in relationships that don't meet our emotional needs. The truth is, emotional unavailability often masquerades as depth. We mistake someone's complexity for profundity, their withdrawal for mystery, their inconsistency for passion. We tell ourselves that the intensity of our longing must mean the connection is meaningful, when often it's just the opposite. The intensity of our pursuit reflects the shallowness of the actual connection. This is where real courage comes in. It takes tremendous bravery to stop chasing what feels familiar but hurts us, to stand still when everything inside us wants to run after someone who's pulling away, to trust that our worth isn't determined by our ability to make someone stay who wants to leave. Let's delve deeper into something rarely discussed: the intoxicating nature of intermittent reinforcement in emotional relationships. When someone is consistently emotionally unavailable, we eventually give up and move on. But when they oscillate between warmth and coldness, between presence and absence, they create a psychological reward pattern that's incredibly difficult to break free from. A predictable pattern, whether positive or negative, allows us to adapt and respond appropriately. But unpredictable patterns keep us constantly alert, constantly hoping, constantly trying to figure out what we need to do to get back to those moments of connection. This uncertainty creates a powerful cocktail of brain chemicals that mirrors the effects of addictive substances. During those brief moments when an emotionally unavailable person does connect, we experience a flood of dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in other forms of addiction. The high feels especially intense because it contrasts so sharply with the emotional drought we've been experiencing. We chase that high, even as it becomes increasingly rare and costly to our emotional well-being. But here's what makes this pattern particularly insidious. Unlike other addictions, society often romanticizes this pursuit. We've been taught that love requires sacrifice, that persistent pursuit shows dedication, that never giving up on someone proves the depth of our feelings. These cultural narratives keep us trapped in cycles of emotional dependency that mask themselves as love stories. The reality is far less romantic. When we're addicted to someone's emotional unavailability, we're not really loving them. We're using them as a mirror for our own unresolved issues. We're trying to prove something to ourselves through them, attempting to heal old wounds through new relationships. Consider how much mental and emotional energy you've invested in trying to understand why someone withdrew. How many hours spent analyzing their behavior, their words, their subtle shifts in tone or text message timing. Now imagine channeling that same energy into understanding yourself, into building your own emotional stability, into creating a life that feels fulfilling, whether someone else chooses to be fully present in it or not. This is where true liberation begins, when we start redirecting our attention from their emotional landscape to our own. When we begin asking not, why did they pull away, but why do I allow their withdrawal to define my worth? The pattern of attraction to emotional unavailability often reveals our own fear of genuine intimacy. It's safer to chase someone who can't fully connect than to risk the vulnerability of authentic connection. When we pursue the emotionally unavailable, we get to play at intimacy while actually keeping ourselves protected from its real demands and risks. When we're constantly trying to earn someone's emotional presence, we don't have to face the challenge of sustaining genuine intimacy. We don't have to reveal our own depths, confront our own emotional limitations, or risk the real vulnerability that comes with true connection. This realization can be both liberating and terrifying. It means that breaking free from our addiction to emotional unavailability requires more than just changing our relationship patterns. It requires changing our relationship with ourselves. The journey begins with radical honesty. We must be willing to look at how we use others' emotional withdrawal as a distraction from our own inner work. How we might be choosing partners who can't fully connect because we're not ready. We must be willing to feel the full depth of our longing for connection without trying to fix it, fill it, or chase it away. This means sitting with the discomfort of our own emotional needs without immediately seeking someone else to meet them. The healing comes not from finding someone who won't withdraw, but from becoming someone who doesn't need another's constant presence to feel whole. It comes from developing such a strong connection with ourselves that someone else's emotional availability or unavailability doesn't shake our foundation. This doesn't mean we stop wanting connection. We're human beings wired for relationship and intimacy. But it means we stop confusing the intensity of our pursuit with the depth of our love. We learn to distinguish between genuine connection and the addictive cycle of chase and withdrawal. The path forward requires us to develop new metrics for measuring the value of our relationships. Instead of gauging intensity by how much we long for someone's presence, we begin to evaluate relationships based on consistency, mutual respect, and shared emotional availability. The most profound transformation occurs when we finally understand that emotional availability isn't just about being present for others. It's about being present with ourselves. It's about developing the capacity to sit with our own emotions, to navigate our own inner landscape with compassion and curiosity, to become the stable, consistent presence we've been seeking in others. This journey requires us to confront some uncomfortable truths. We must acknowledge how our addiction to emotional unavailability has shaped our choices, our relationships, and our sense of self. We must recognize the ways we've used the pursuit of others as a means of avoiding our own emotion. Consider the energy you spend thinking about someone who's emotionally withdrawn. Every minute spent analyzing their behavior is a minute not spent developing your own emotional intelligence. Every hour invested in trying to regain their attention is an hour not invested in building your own state. The path to breaking this addiction begins with small steps that require enormous courage. It starts with catching ourselves in the moment when we feel the urge to chase someone who's pulling away. Instead of immediately acting on that impulse, we pause. We breathe. We turn our attention inward and asking, what am I feeling right now? What need am I trying to meet through this pursuit? What would it look like to meet this need myself? This isn't about becoming emotionally self-sufficient to the point of isolation. It's about developing a healthy relationship with our own emotional needs so that we can engage in relationships from a place of wholeness rather than hunger. When we're no longer desperate for connection, we become capable of discerning which connections truly serve our growth and well-being. The transformation requires us to develop new skills, these skills that might feel foreign or uncomfortable at first. We must learn to sit with uncertainty without trying to control it, to feel longing without immediately trying to satisfy it, to experience emotional disconnection without assuming it reflects our worth. This is where the real work begins. We start noticing our triggers without being controlled by them. We observe our patterns without judgment, but with a firm commitment to change. We begin to understand that our attraction to emotional unavailability has been teaching us something important about ourselves, something we're now ready to learn. Think about the last time you felt triggered by someone's emotional withdrawal. What if, instead of chasing them, you had turned that energy toward understanding your own reaction? What if you had used that moment as an opportunity to practice emotional availability with yourself? When you feel the familiar pull of someone's emotional distance, pause. Notice the physical sensations in your body, the tightening in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the tension in your shoulders. Rather than trying to change these sensations or escape them through pursuit, simply be present with. As you develop this practice, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to recognize that your response to others' emotional unavailability is actually an invitation to deepen your relationship with yourself. Each trigger becomes a doorway to greater self-awareness and self-compassion. This doesn't mean the process is easy. Breaking any addiction involves withdrawal symptoms, and breaking our addiction to emotional unavailability is no different. We might feel anxious, restless, even empty at first. We might question whether we're making the right choice by not pursuing connection with someone who's with you. But gradually, something shifts. We begin to notice that our capacity for genuine connection, both with ourselves and others, actually increases when we stop chasing those who can't or won't fully connect. We start attracting people who match our level of emotional availability. We begin creating relationships based on mutual presence rather than the drama of pursuit and withdrawal. The most powerful revelation comes when we realize that our addiction to emotional unavailability was never really about the other person. It was about our own journey toward wholeness. Every person who triggered this pattern was actually helping us identify where we needed to grow, what we needed to heal, how we needed to show up differently for ourselves. This understanding doesn't excuse harmful behavior. It suggests we should be grateful for emotional manipulation. Rather, it empowers us to take responsibility for our own patterns and choices. It allows us to see how we've been co-creating these dynamics and gives us the awareness to make different choices. As this awareness grows, we naturally begin to lose interest in relationships that don't offer genuine emotional connection. Not because we're trying to force ourselves to choose differently, but because we've developed a strong enough relationship with ourselves that emotional unavailability simply loses its appeal. We start recognizing red flags. Earlier, we become less likely to rationalize or excuse emotional withdrawal. We develop the courage to state our needs clearly and the wisdom to step back when those needs aren't being met. We learn to distinguish between someone who's temporarily overwhelmed and someone who's chronically unavailable. This newfound clarity creates space for authentic connections to emerge. When we're no longer pouring our energy into pursuing those who withdraw, we become available for relationships that offer genuine reciprocity. We attract partners who are capable of showing up fully, who value emotional intimacy, who are doing their own inner work. The ultimate freedom comes when we realize that we no longer need to chase anyone's attention, not because we've become hardened or closed off, but because we've developed such a rich, nuanced relationship with ourselves that external validation, while still pleasant, is no longer necessary for our sense of worth. This is the true end of the addiction. Not when we force ourselves to stop pursuing emotional unavailability, but when we naturally lose interest in it because we found something more fulfilling. A genuine, consistent connection with ourselves that extends naturally into authentic connections with others. Remember this, your attraction to emotional unavailability was never a flaw in your character. It was a signal pointing you toward deeper self-discovery and growth. By understanding and healing this pattern, you're not just changing your relationship dynamics, you're transforming your entire relationship with yourself and with life. The journey from addiction to freedom isn't linear. There will be moments of doubt, times when old patterns feel tempting, situations that trigger familiar responses. But with each step forward, each moment of choosing self-respect over pursuit, each instance of turning toward your own emotions rather than chasing someone else's, you build stronger foundations for genuine connection. Your worth isn't measured by your ability to make someone stay who wants to leave. Your value isn't determined by how hard you can chase someone who's pulling away. Your capacity for love isn't proven by how much emotional unavailability you can tolerate. You are worthy of consistent, reliable love, both from yourself and others. You deserve relationships where connection flows naturally, where emotional availability is the norm rather than the exception, where your presence is valued rather than your pursuit. The time has come to break free from this pattern, to stop chasing what withdraws and start creating space for what naturally flows, to release the addiction to emotional unavailability and embrace the possibility of genuine connection, first with yourself and then with others who are ready to meet you there. The choice is yours. The power has always been yours, and the time for transformation is now.